Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in from BritLit HQ here down in the basement. It's been a while. I've been kind of out of action a little bit, keeping up with things online, but I had knee surgery not too long ago, and that has been a slower recovery than I'd hoped, so not as mobile as I'd hoped to be. So things just aren't really moving as fast as they normally do. Anyway, here I am. I just finished looking at the work we've done for the Elliott unit, which was interesting as always, so keep up the good work as we get pretty close to the end of our term. Also, that unit is I've always found to be an interesting one because I like T.S. Eliot as both a poet and a critic or a theorist of poetry, although I, like many of you, do sense that that degree of difficulty that his poetry presents. I have the luxury of time, and it's sort of my job to be able to read that stuff or to take the time to read and reread and all that, whereas most people don't. So that gives me the benefit of time, honestly, which is what that poetry demands. So I think it's kind of intimidating or difficult for a lot of people because you don't necessarily get it right away, and who has the time to read and reread and kind of work at it realistically in the space of a day. But anyway, also, as people found, I think the more you do think about it or reread it and have that opportunity, the more the poetry kind of gives back to you as far as deeper levels of meaning. So it's always nice to encounter work that has that sort of complexity to it. It sort of rewards our investment of time. And I love his theory of the poetic mind, this idea that poets, but really artists generally, function, or the way that creativity works is the mind as the sort of receptacle for gathering things, this just sort of storage place for kind of fragmented pieces, which is, I think, reflects really, even in Eliot's time, but certainly today, just that kind of fragmentary nature of our day-to-day experience. There's this stuff that we've got to think about, and then a bus goes by, and then this major world event happens that we watch on the news, which is actually footage of someone's cell phone, and then another bus goes by, and then we have to go make a sandwich, and just kind of this disjointed sense of the world. All of that stuff isn't lost on it, it's gathered up, but it doesn't necessarily make sense as a whole, or the interconnections don't make sense until some moment of creativity, one other piece is introduced that actually affects all of the other pieces in the receptacle, in the mind as a storage device. And it's really fascinating to see that idea of creativity reworked and re-expressed in the advertising with Stefani for HP, of all things. So kind of a surprising reworking of this old idea. Anyway, I've liked that. I've liked T.S. Eliot for a long time, and so I really like that unit. And we move into an equally interesting unit, I think. In fact, the three that we're working on or can be thinking about as a group are the Eliot, Virginia Woolf, which is where we're at now, and then James Joyce, kind of the major modernist figures. Woolf is very different in as much as the quality or the style, the tone, the atmosphere of her work is very different, but as profoundly impactful as far as being kind of experimental and part of this modernist movement as Eliot's or Joyce was. So she fits right in there. A fascinating biographical character, given her family history and its prominence as a Victorian family. So the way that she embraced modernism and maybe explored it, I think maybe reflects some of that family background. And then the unit itself, I think, has sort of a fun option for what the writing component is, that given that Woolf is so much known for her early feminist attitudes, or just attitudes about basic equality for women as women, but especially women as artists and women as writers, and how they could be professional, or what they needed to be professional and taken seriously. It's sort of fun to read that played off against, as is suggested in the unit here, kind of this modern version of women writing for women, quote unquote, which is one of the things that Woolf talks about, but our version could be the seemingly endless pile of magazines that you always find at the grocery checkout there. Or maybe you subscribe, no judgment, But to sort of think about basically like how Virginia Woolf might read Cosmo, Glamour, these kinds of magazines here. And obviously there's others to choose from. So we have a unit that I think is interesting because of the person we're studying and the kind of the impact that her writing had and continues to have, but also the opportunity to really reflect on how those ideas might be brought to bear relative to a much more contemporary kind of cultural artifact, basic, women's magazines, for lack of a better term. And then we move into Joyce, who again is very different, kind of biographically speaking, whose work it may not share any immediate similarities that you would see with people like Eliot or Woolf, but he was again absolutely sort of fundamental and central to that modernist movement, really pushing the bounds of what writing could do, in his case prose, both short story and the novel form. So these three taken together, they really do provide kind of the core of our study of the modernist period. And then, to be perfectly honest, we get pretty close to the end of our term, so we're actually, not too far away. It's Friday, November 9th when I'm recording this, so we have, time-wise, less than a month, but important to keep in mind that there's Thanksgiving in there, and as you know, things just sort of race towards the end, at the end of the semester like this. So keep up with the good work, be in touch if you have any questions at all, and I will talk to everybody soon.